Hello and welcome to the MACH House at NRF. I am here with Filippo Conforti from Commerce Layer, Nilay Oza from Klevu, and Darren Gornarcha from Uniform. My name is Rachel Tonner, and I'm from Klevu as well. And we have just launched an integration between the three of our platforms for the benefit of merchants and those who are interested in going composable. So I'm going to ask the first question to Filippo. So why should e-commerce teams care about composable?
Well, because especially for certain type of brands, when the complexity becomes let's say, bigger, when you have more sophisticated requirements, you need to address each aspect of your experience, of the customer experience, with specialized tools. So this is why Composable is the answer to that need of flexibility and personalization to the customer experience.
Yeah, and that can be quite complex. I guess it sounds like it could be quite complex. Nilay, why is Composable important from your point of view?
Thank you, Rachel, and glad to be here. I think if you look at it from the shopper's point of view, we are already in an age where, people don't have time. They really want things fast, but they want that to be relevant as well. And when you combine the speed and relevance together, there are so many, great technologies out there. And now with MACH and Composable, we actually have a true opportunity to combine and assimilate these technologies under under API call or under one package without exposing the complexity to the shopper. And I think that these two aspects from the shopper experience, and then touching on what Filippo said about the actually having the curation and the personalization as well. So when you look at these three aspects, I feel that it makes a lot of sense to kind of go with Composable, but go with this more sort of modern approach to Composable.
Darren?
Yeah, I think to add to both of those points, the other thing is the rate of change is so fast. I mean, a year ago, was anybody talking about ChatGPT? No. And what's going to happen in the next year? Is Apple going to release some AR thing that's going to change the world again? Composable gives us the opportunity to have new technologies assembled quickly, easily, that agility that Filippo talked about. The idea that we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know where things are going, but Composable gives you that platform to be adding things in incrementally. Or if you pick something and it didn't work out for you, being able to replace that with something better versus being stuck in sort of a single one-size-fits-all platform where you can't bring in other things. I think that is the biggest benefit because customer expectations are just ratcheting up every day. They're getting more and more and more. How are we going to respond to those? We need tools, and we need the right tool, and we need to be spending money in the right places versus buying this big thing which you only can use like 20% because it's not the right fit anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you all have kind of talked about the ideal of Composable, but we do know that, all of us are MACH advocates, but we do know that there's challenges and pain points associated with going into a MACH architecture or a MACH build. What are some of those pain points that you've experienced so far? Maybe I'll start with you again, Filippo.
Well, the first one is mainly, let's say, a matter of the mindset of the user, of the customer. You start thinking, you go from thinking of one solution to a composition of solutions that can be a bit intimidating. The reality is that it's not necessarily complex, and so our job as an ecosystem is also to let the users understand that this complexity can be handled and can be handled by us, so that is not, it's not something that they should be afraid of or like scared by. So it's something that maybe exists behind the scenes, but we can handle that.
Yeah, Nilay, what are your thoughts? What are some of the pain points?
It's a great question. Two points I would put. First is sort of fear of unknown. From the retailer standpoint, again, as a retailer, I'm investing heavily into, technically it's whether it's Mac or whatever, I care about my business. So as a retailer, when I invest into something, which is, let's say, called Mac, I have this fear of unknown because I'm investing into it. I don't know what's next, right? Because there are several applications that I'm going to use, which I all have respect for. But would they really work in harmony? Would they work in tandem? That question kind of keeps coming to me. And now if something goes wrong, and that's where this fear of unknown actually materializes, where do I go to? Do I go to one vendor, one agency, one provider? Where do I go to? And I think that's one aspect. I feel that in some cases at least, although the integration was done great, but something changed at certain component level affecting others. So I think, so when you translate this fear of unknown to time, money, effort, classic kind of paradigm, then you would start to see that they could pretty quickly actually could go out of my hand if not managed well. So yeah, it's nothing negative about it, but it's something that I think it's in the practical real world, in the current sort of economic climate, more and more retailers would like to secure that, mitigate that risk in a way. So yeah, and our job is to help them mitigate that risk. That's, I think, our job.
Yeah, so Filippo and Nilay you both touched on like peace of mind. We'll take care of it. We've got the complexity. You do what you need to do. As a shopper and as a merchandiser or as somebody working on the back end or shopping on the front end of a website, they're just looking to do what they need to do. I just want to do what I need to do it quickly, and move on with my life kind of thing. How does Uniform help kind of solve that pain point?
Well, I think the big fear that I keep hearing from customers and retailers specifically is that they're worried about not being able to do the things they need to do. One of the things that's happened in the shift to Mach is that everything's become very developer-oriented, very developer-centric. You need a developer to change a page. You need a developer to make a new content type. You need a developer to really do a lot of things that you didn't need to do before. They used to have tools that they could just self-service, and they lost that. And one of the things that Uniform, the reason why Uniform was founded is to bring that back to marketers, to merchandisers, to content contributors. They need a way to visually build things. And because we're visual critters, marketers and merchandisers are all visual critters. And these people know your customer better than anybody. You want them empowered to make those changes. And honestly, the faster you go, the faster you learn. Because that's the other part of this, is that we're going to try things, and some of them are going to work, and some of them aren't. So how do we go faster? You let those people do it themselves. And so that was really the Uniform way, but bringing all these technologies together, bringing commerce, bringing search, bringing content together, and applying whatever design system you want so that they can do that themselves in a safe and governed way. But that is really where I think Uniform fits in, letting people do things visually again.
And Filippo, you talk a lot about this on your newsletter, about like how commerce is actually simple. You need a commerce engine, you need search, you need a CMS. Can you talk a little bit more of that, about how these pain points are solved with this kind of simple view of Mach?
Well, I wouldn't say it's simple in general.
Okay.
No, in general, at least our goal at Commerce is to simplify what has been traditionally complex. Looking at enterprise commerce, enterprise has become synonym of complexity, legacy, and bad technology, bad developer experience. So what we are trying to do is starting from the developer, because I'm a developer myself, and I think like the developer experience is very important, very, very important for like the success of a project. And so again, it's not like that commerce is complex, especially when you talk to when you work with a global brand that has different needs for different markets, different customer segments. There is a lot of complexity. The point is wrapping this complexity. As you said, the customers just want to enter a store online, offline, let's say in brick and mortar store, just buy their products and keep going, right? So it's we should handle this complexity and make it simple. Ultimately, an API is a way to provide a simplified version of something that can be also quite complex behind the scenes. You mentioned ChatGPT. I don't can't even imagine how complex this can be. But then you just prompt an API and you get your result. So it's the interface that has to be simple.
Absolutely. And Nilay, finding something on a website, it sounds like it should be simple. How does Klevu make that simple for merchandisers and also shoppers on the front end?
I say this way, that search is everything in life, right? We all are searching for something, whatever we do. And when you visit an online store as a shopper, you go with a purpose in your mind. You are not there to read, weather, or you are not there to, see the traffic in New York City. You are there with a purpose. There is some purpose in your mind, whether you actually want, a brake paddle for your, bike, or you are actually looking for some nice handbag or whatever. There is some purpose. Whether you make a purchase at that point or not, there is an intent that you go with. So for about 9 years, what we have been doing, and it's sort of a long journey, right? I don't think, I wouldn't say that we have just solved all the problems, because it's about understanding the intent and then translating that intent into bringing the most relevant product to the shopper in a most genuine way, without actually, muddling the actual logic or anything. So I think having that genuine discovery experience in the long term kind of pays off. So I really focus on that from the shopper point of view, and then have the retailer an ability, because we are a true AI system. We have been building foundation AI models for the last 7-8 years now. So, and when you think from the retailer point of view, it's sort of, they want to then control this AI. They want to influence and augment this AI. So providing retailers an opportunity to really augment, influence, manipulate part of this ranking, but not compromise the relevance. So that's the balance that I can say that we have kind of really, struck now, and that brings the most meaningful experience to the shopper. And of course, the byproduct of that is higher conversion and more sales and higher GMV and all of that. But I don't think that's what you root for. You actually root for better, meaningful experience, and byproduct is your better conversion.
Yeah, and we were talking about this just before this as well, about how does that then work with the uniform front end, personalization through AI, and then obviously there's loads of other things going on, like what content you want to display. The merchandisers are making business rules. Like, how does that work to actually display what the shopper finds at the end as a good experience? Darren?
Yeah, I think, so as Klevu is picking up intent, right, and you're segmenting your customers, and you're finding who they are, and you're using behavioral analysis to understand who they are. Those signals get passed to Uniform. And so not only is the search results that are being handed to Uniform to display, they're being influenced by those same signals, but we can also use that to actually hand that off to other parts of the site or other parts of the experience to make sure we're in coordination. So if you're in the big spender category, then I'm going to also be thinking about other offers and promotions, or maybe calls to action that I want to offer to you as well outside of the search experience. And so we can be coordinated in how we're interacting with the customer. We're honoring who they've told us they are. And if you, let's say, have other customer data from, let's say, a CRM or a customer data platform, then we can also coordinate those signals too. So now we have your current intent and what you're doing right now, and maybe what you've done over a couple of visits. Maybe we have what you've previously bought, and so we have your transactional history as well, because we're picking that up from Commerce and Commerce Layer. And so now I have all of this stuff. So now I'm actually recognizing you as a customer. I'm honoring the loyalty you've given me as a brand. I'm showing you I know you, and also what you're currently trying to do, because that's the most irritating thing in the world is that, yeah, I bought that one thing for a friend. It was a gag gift. I bought a David Hasselhoff CD, and now you're just showing me David Hasselhoff again and again. It was a one-time thing. Current search intent helps overcome that. That's the thing I hate about Amazon, is that all the things I bought for my family this last Christmas season, now I'm going to be haunted because they're not smart enough to realize that was just then. and I'm not buying that again. We're going to see those ads forever. But I think that's the value of really coordinating all these tools together and bringing a cohesive view of the customer and what they're trying to do currently and past history, because they might have bought a kayak and now I might want to sell them some new kayak accessories. But other things maybe not, because my intent doesn't match that. And so it's really understanding them holistically across all these systems and then making them behave as one.
Yeah, and making it easy, I guess, for the merchant to make that experience really good for the customer. And like you were saying, Nilay, before, it's all about making the experience really good, and then the byproduct of that is conversion. Filippo, what are your predictions about the future of MACH commerce? Because commerce is a huge part of kind of MACH builds, but what's your kind of vision for the future of MACH commerce?
Yeah, I think it will be simplified for the end user, and there will be more and more specialization, especially if you really want to build a true MACH architecture, a true composable architecture. You need to embrace specialization. And so having and picking the right tools and eventually changing the tools, because as you said, is one of the most important promise of composable commerce is that you must be able to change as the environment changes. And so like being able to and selecting and composing highly specialized tools and being able to replace these tools is very, very important. So my prediction is that customers will understand and will go more and more towards this direction.
Nilay, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, like, if you think from an sort of an analogy that, the complexity is, let's say, is on the ground right now in many builds, and it's kind of going more and more underground, and the user is not seeing that complexity. So I think you could say it's just a more modern approach to MACH or whatever. I think having an API for headless or composable is not going to be sort of MACH standard as such. I mean, that's sort of given. It's a table stake. You need to have that. But is it really sustainable? Is it really scalable? Is it really usable, right? I think not just by developers, but then also the platform like Uniform, that can such platform actually adopt such APIs and actually make that transformative layer that I was talking about this morning, that having that layer would make the whole complexity kind of really buried for the user. So I feel, kind of building on to what Filippo said, that maintainability will improve, and the complexity will sort of start to, getting smaller and smaller, like you could say sort of more like Moore's law, that it's going to get more kind of tinier and tinier. So,
what is this transformative layer? If you could define that.
I don't want to go very technical, but it's very, very important to understand. I really applaud what Uniform has done here. So having a visual workspace is great, but I don't think that's the most unique aspect. What is unique here is that the technology like Klevu, for example, or Commerce Layer and other technologies that are out there, every theme has its own data model. And what Uniform has actually developed here is that this transformative layer in between that allows the data model to be seamlessly work with the data model that's in the theme. Now, if you don't have this data model or transformation layer, what happens? Then you require a developer to actually go to your theme front end and align your data model with the vendor that you're using. Now, if you change the vendor, you have to go again to that vendor, understand their data model, and change in your front end code as well. So every time you are making changes or vendor is making changes, you as a customer requires to have the development hours and change this model. And this is the problem I feel that the way Uniform has solved will allow the customer, like what we talked, like maintainability or hiding the complexity, that's actually addressing that use case from Uniform. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Do you think there is, Darren, do you think there is a difference between kind of is there like a traditional mock build now and more like modern mock stuff? It seems like there's so many options for how to build these days within the mock ecosystem, which is amazing. But kind of, is there a difference between modern and traditional mock, and kind of how does this collaboration fit in there?
You know, at one point, I think we were talking about headless 1.0 versus headless 2.0, which I think is what you're saying, really. This, traditional versus modern approach, which is, do you write everything in code? Do you implement everything? And I think we saw that as this first couple years of composable practices happen. Everyone built these things in code. And what ultimately happened, it started very quickly, but then like the velocity of these teams just started to decay, and it's just slowed down, and things got slower and slower because you started to get burdened by the weight of the code that you used to integrate everything. And then an API changed, and then you swapped out one vendor for another vendor, and you had to do that refactoring work and all that back end work. Meanwhile, merchandisers, marketers aren't getting their campaigns run, aren't getting their things done because the team's busy doing other things. So that problem has sort of resulted in now modern mock, which is clicks, not code. Really getting away from writing that foundational kind of plumbing. I affectionately call it glue code, because you're gluing all these systems together. And instead, now we're doing this in clicks. So now we're configuring those things, not coding those things. And so that is, I think, a more modern approach, because it respects composability at the idea of it should be modular. It should be easy. It shouldn't be glued into place. It's like buying beautiful Legos and then gluing them together. Nobody would do that, right? Unless you're building that Death Star and it took you a long time. But really, that's, I think, what modern is, because I think it's about hiding that complexity so that you can do the things, you can build those great experiences. And of course, I asked ChatGPT, what's the big trend in 2024 around customer experience? And it said it was omni-channel. And so maybe we'll help customers buy things consistently across channel, and actually treat them and remember them from place to place, whether it's in store, online, in a AR experience, or whatever the heck is going to happen in 24. Who knows? But we just need to be ready for whatever change is going to come.
Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes I do wish I'd glued the Lego together on my son's on my son's Lego builds, but that's a different story. You are all leaders in your respective fields, and if we're thinking about speaking to a merchant who is interested in getting involved in mock commerce and interested in building a mock architecture, what advice do you have for them? What are the steps that they need to take? What do they need to consider before they embark on this journey? Filippo?
For me, it's like assuming you are on a monolith, you're running on a monolithic platform, you should start looking at your monolith and separate the different domains of your experience. Because I believe we are talking about the customer experience, but the customer experience is very different depending on the domain. And speaking of what we do, for example, and looking from a customer experience perspective, it's totally true. The customer enters a website or a physical store with an intent. They are looking for something. They are looking for a product, to buy something. And so they want to be engaged. They want to be inspired. They want to be inspired. And inspiration comes from content, right? So it comes from images, videos, content, and stories, right? At some point, there is a different type of experience. So you decide that you want to purchase that product, and you add to cart. From now on, you don't want to be inspired. You want to feel secure. You want to have a fast, smooth checkout. Your experience doesn't end when you have placed your order. If something goes wrong, there is a great chance for the customer to give you a great experience to handle the issue, right? If you return your order. So again, there is this. We, as commerce layer, we draw a quite clean line between the experience that we think we can handle well, and the type of experience, the part of the experience that we don't want to handle, because other companies and people know how to do that much better. So again, my advice would be start from two components. I published an article a while ago, like Composable begins with two components. So before going from one to many, let's go from one to two. And these two components, in my opinion, are like content, So one type of experience, the content-led experience on one side, product discovery and editorial content, and commerce. So the cart checkout, which is the boring part, right? So this is the first step, and then you can iterate and divide this experience even further.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like, I know at MACH 2 last year, Paul Smith won the MACH Impact Award for a front-end MACH because they decided to separate out their commerce from their content. They started by employing Klevu and Cloudinary and another and Storyblock on the front end, and now they're replacing their back-end commerce system. So I think there isn't one way to go. You don't have to start with the foundation of the commerce layer necessarily and go out to the front end from there. Nilay, can you speak a little bit more about
very briefly,
that?
I agree with what Filippo said, but just to add one thing, if you're migrating to MACH or Composable, I think only one thing I would put there is don't assume. Invest your time into clarifying your expectations, because I think if you come from non-MACH environment, you come with that assumptions, and you don't want surprises, as you go in your journey. So I would say that, clarify your expectations, really well in advance, so that how the dots going to connect for your store and for your shoppers as well.
Darren, what advice do you have for starting on a MACH commerce journey?
I think it's taking inventory of your risk appetite, how fast you want to go, and then how can you slice this journey up, and then pace it, because I think a lot of people think you have to do it all in one, and you don't. Like we have customers who are doing, leaving their legacy backends and just building the front end. We have customers who are doing a slice at a time, taking a website down at a time. There's lots of ways to slice this. But I think it has to do with your risk appetite and how quickly you want to go, and how that learning journey. So I think it's about thinking about what's your risk level, and how might you slice this by brand, by front end versus back end. You can leave things in place. You don't have to rip out everything, and you can modernize some pieces and then weave in more modern technology once you start building out that new front end. But I think there's ways to chunk this up, and I even have customers just building navigation first in a composable way and then working their way down into content. So I think there's lots of ways to come at this. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small. You can learn, but get started is what I would really say. Start experimenting, start trying, but manage your risk by managing the scope.
Yeah, and I guess this collaboration so perfectly supports all of that, because Uniform kind of sits in this middle layer and makes it possible to make those decisions that are right for your business, and over time make that long-term plan, but with some short-term wins as well.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all for joining us today at the MACH House. And yeah, if you want to learn more about the integration, you can contact any of us on LinkedIn or. Thank you so much, Darren, Nilay, and Filippo.
Thank you.
Thank you.